Once again, this is a special presentation of the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation. I am Brian Hefty, and here today with me are Hoyt Choate with TapLogic and Jared Johnson with Capello USA. Hoyt and Jared, glad to have you with me today. We want to talk a little bit today about the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation. Hoyt, let's start with you first. What is this organization exactly, and why are you involved?
Well, good morning, Brian. I'm involved for the reason it's always good to have a group of people who we can sound ideas with and against, whether they're company issues that we're looking into the future to resolve things that need to be tended to, or whether they are issues that our customers bring to us. It's always good to have someone to talk to.
Okay, so when we look at this environment we have today in the United States and really all around the world, as farmers, we're a small percentage of the population, and for those of us in agriculture, we're a small percentage of the population. Why is the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation important for getting that message out? The
voice. And we all need that unified voice that we can present at a moment's notice. And so I think that the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation is great for that, where we can talk again to our customers and listen to what they have to say and then translate that into something that RNMF can take to the necessary people.
All right, Jared, how about you? You've been involved with Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation for a while now. What do you see that we really need to work on out there in terms of getting the message out to not only farmers, but especially to non-farmers?
Thanks, Brian. I think one of the things is this conversation can be somewhat scary at times. So I think one of the things RNMF can do, and those of us that are members and supporters of the foundation, we can just open up that conversation at a trade show, in line at the local cafe. Just have the discussions with the local farmers, because there are people that want to know more, don't know how to ask the question, maybe aren't sure where to start. So I think if we've got the expertise, we're working toward that goal, we just open those conversations with people wherever we can.
Okay, so this foundation was set up basically to not only talk to farmers and those of us in the industry and hopefully get some good messages out about how to responsibly manage nutrients and other resources, but also to talk to non-farmers especially. But what specifically does your company do to help the farmer out, and how does that make a difference for him? How does that help responsibly manage nutrients and our resources in this country?
Sure, we offer a line of headers that they're technology first. The intention with our machines is to offer something that's more efficient, can help the bottom line of the farm, but it does so in a way that, you know, it assists in the breakdown of organic matter to replenish the soil quicker. It's residue management with our corn headers. We use a chopping corn header to manage residue, to give some increased biodegradation to the BT stalks, the high yielding corn. And you know, it's the small things that count. If you do those small things right every time, you make a positive impact, and that's the concept behind Capello Designs.
Okay, so for the non-farmers who are listening, what we're talking about here is the head that goes on the front of a corn combine, and you're going through the cornfield, and you talk about how your heads are more efficient compared to other heads that would be out on the market. I mean, what does that really mean to a non-farmer?
You know, to a non-farmer, efficiency turns things like reduced fuel into a measurable change, reduced use of fertilizer by reusing that fertilizer nature gives us in the organic material that's left after harvest, and trying to manage those things in a way where you maximize what's left in the field for your benefit to minimize what you need to put on the field sort of mechanically.
Yep, so in other words, taking those corn stalks, the leaves, everything that's left out in the field after harvest, and allowing that to break down quicker, because that does contain nutrients, and then that can help the very next crop.
Right.
All right, so Hoyt, how about you? When we talk about the technology side, really, that's your area of expertise. What things is your company doing specifically to help the farmer responsibly manage the nutrients and really everything that we've got, all of our resources, all of our natural resources here? How are you helping, and how is your company helping?
Well, Brian, to begin with, farmers are very responsible stewards of their land, and they're out to make a dollar. The economics of farming today require that we first manage everything that we measure, everything that we want to manage. So with our Soil Test Pro product, you can go out into the field and by taking grid sampling, you know your nutrient content everywhere in your field and therefore can apply the right amount of fertilizer in the right place, therefore turning higher yields across your field.
Okay, so when you talk about grid sampling, again, I'll just, to convey this to the non-farmer, what we're talking about here is if you've got an entire field, what used to happen is farmers would walk out there and they would pull a few soil samples, they'd pull some soil and they'd combine it all together and send it in for analysis. And now what your company is doing is allowing farmers and others in the industry to take a lot more than just one sample per field, right?
That's correct, Brian. And in the technology world that we have today, to have these abilities on your smartphone, so it's handy in your pocket, you can go out into your field and actually measure the nutrient values everywhere in the field, place by place. So when we spread our fertilizer, we wind up putting the right amount in the right place, no excess, and yet enough everywhere to create a yield to have an economic return.
Right, because the big thing, and this is something I've noticed as I've traveled around the world in a lot of foreign countries, they're still managing great big fields all the same way across the field, but you're finding lots of variance within a field, right?
Every day, and with the thousands and thousands of tests that are coming into the Soil Test Pro offices, we see that variation is very wide, much more than you would think. I farm myself, and even in the fields that I've farmed for 40 years, after I grid test them, I find that I have been applying fertilizer that I didn't need to, and in some places not putting enough.
Okay, so let's, from the farmer's point of view, a lot of questions I get from farmers are, what's the right grid size? Is it 5 acres? Is it 2.5 acres? Is it 1 acre? Is it 10? What do you think it is?
I think it's what fits your field the best. A farmer knows his fields. He knows how to manage his fields. We're not trying to tell him how to do something different. But when you go into your field and you set a grid, the primary objective is to be able to return to that spot in coming years so that you can keep a catalog of how your soil is behaving and how the changes that you are making are affecting your soil structure.
Yeah, I'm glad you said the farmer knows his fields, because I think about even in our own operation, we're farming some of the same ground that my dad did, my grandpa, and even my great-grandfather were farming some of those acres. So as farmers, we do know the ground, but we ultimately have to have that data to make the right decision when it comes to fertility.
It's the same thing whether you're cutting a 2x4 to nail something together or with your cutting torch or your bandsaw. It's always good and always wise to measure first. And that's what Soil Test Pro, that's what nutrient management is all about. Know first what you have to work with and therefore then put the right amount to grow your crop.
Okay, so what roughly does it cost for a farmer? Let's say I'm set up on 5-acre grids. What roughly is it going to cost a farmer to do his own soil testing and get good, complete soil tests over an acre on average?
Brian, back to your previous question, if I might, just a little bit, but truly a 2.5 to a 5-acre grid is about the right size grid to put on your field. That represents things very well and keeps your cost in a very affordable range. Yep. So somewhere between, with a basic test for just the absolutely necessary information, around $4 an acre. Yep. Up to, and with the very extensive tests, you can climb your costs up to the $7 to $8 an acre range.
But what do you figure the average farmer is investing? Let's say it's a corn acre. What's the average farmer investing in fertilizer in your area? You farm, how much are you investing?
You know, depending upon the crop, and in a corn crop in particular, you're putting several $100s an acre, $200 an acre in fertilizer. So it's like throwing $20 bills out in your field. What I really want to do is to make sure that I put that $20 bill where it can be used. Right. There's 2 places for your fertilizer dollars, and this is something we believe strongly in. One is in the right place in the field, and the other is in your back pocket.
And how often do you recommend a farmer does soil testing?
I think it's up to the farmer and how intensively he chooses to manage his fields. If he has a wide variation in nutrient content in his field, then I suggest that he gets on an every other year cycle. Yeah. but many times every 3 years is a good cycle to be on.
Yep. Jared, let's come back to you. So let's talk more specifically about your corn headers. What does make them different from anything else that a farmer is going to find out in the market?
Sure, we've got a few things that we think make us pretty unique. One of the first is 50 years in the industry. It's Capello's 50th year this year. They've been doing this quite a while. They've had some time to work out some kinks. They introduced chopping corn heads in the early 80s, and a chopping corn head is basically designed to eliminate extra passes in the field. Not only do that, but to chop that biomass, the stalk, while you're processing the rest of the plant. Yep. So you prevent tip overs, wind breakage, all those things. You get a nice, even, it's basically a wood chipper. You're looking for a mulched up corn plant when you're done.
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of fun for me is we work with the products from both of these particular companies, and with that chopping corn head, it's one of the things I've often said, I'm never going back to a regular corn head after having the chopping head, because I did have to run the stalk chopper. So we'd go through combine, then go run the stalk chopper. We still didn't do the very best job. And one of the big things too is just the way that the head does slice the residue. It seems like, well, I know we get a lot faster breakdown in the spring than what we were doing before.
Yeah, the breakdown in the fall is clear. It becomes even more clear in the spring. And of course, we strive to do the best job harvesting corn we possibly can, and that's always job number one. But the other thing that the chopping corn head really brings to the table is a much more efficient planting in the spring. Efficient in the fact that you get a better seed placement. You might be able to plant earlier in the year. You may prevent wetness or dryness depending on the seasons. But we think that each piece of a farming operation is the piece of a quilt. The whole year is a quilted together piece of art. And if you don't do one thing correctly, it may impact you for several seasons or years down the road. Yeah. So the folks at Capello are looking for a machine that's efficient, it's cost effective, and it has a positive impact on the overall farming operation.
Yep, so ultimately what we're trying to do here with the technologies with both companies is not only responsibly manage nutrients and every other resource that we've got in our environment, but it's also about producing more food for our growing world. So Hoyt, is there any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers today?
Absolutely, Brian, and I think one of the challenges that we have in the future as farmers, we adopt more technologies, not that necessarily change the way that we farm, but that make the way we farm better. We can take a message to the general public, and I think that's incredibly important. We run that through Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation, but I would say go to school with your kids. Go back to school. Go with your kids and introduce yourself to their peers, because that's the generation that we need to become familiar to.
Yep, well said. Jared, how about you?
Other than to just share with you that I'm very proud to be a part of a foundation like RNMF, where the goal is to go out and do better for all, make a positive impact in something that's one of the best, proudest professions on earth, in my opinion. And I think we're doing it in small ways, but it's a big message. So I'm just excited to go out and have those conversations we talked about with people and reach that generation Hoyt's talking about. Yep. The younger kids, the folks that don't know it yet. I want to go out, make the right goals.
Yeah. All right, well, Jared, Hoyt, thanks a lot for being on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Stick around. We'll be right back after this.